It's going well.
Good to know.
Here, let me just prep this, and I will tweet it real quick. Prep this, and I will turn off the sound. That should fix that. So, and I'll share this. There we go. And I'll copy the link for you guys if you want to tweet it or anything like that. There's that. And promoting folks. Hey, Lucas, would you like me, can I make you a co-host so you can promote people, attendees, if they?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, well, it's good to see everybody. And if it's like the last time, we'll start to get a lot of folks jumping in. But yeah, once again, welcome to the second Baseline Protocol office hours. We do this every Wednesday at noon, US Eastern, and it's just a Q&A session for community members or anyone to ask questions. And in the absence of questions, we'll talk about what's going on. And sometimes we'll have celebrity guest stars. So with that, to see you.
Thanks, John.
All right, so it looks like we got another attendee. So I'll just promote these to panelists. Hi, everybody. So are there any burning questions that folks have or speak them out loud? It's not such a big group yet that we have a problem with blocking people, so. Yeah, this is Kyle.
You are the true celebrity.
Oh, dude, not at all. So besides, I'm not the one that looks like I just came out of a Marvel movie. So
ridiculous.
Right on. So Kyle's been working on a bunch of interesting stuff, and Kyle, you'd be welcome to preview anything you'd like in that regard.
Yeah, sure. Can do that.
Don't out anything.
No, I will. No, I definitely will. But yeah, let's circle back on it. I'm just sort of. I just previewed it. I just need to take a little break, and I've been previewing it. Like I'm preview. I definitely will on this call for sure.
I'd like to say a few things about Kyle in particular. This is Kyle and several other companies in the Baseline community, which is smaller firms, smaller groups. Can have a big impact. I mean, Kyle came in and established himself as a legitimate voice in the community early. Now is a maintainer and is involved with giant companies working on really interesting stuff in real time.
Really cool. It's a really cool community for sure. Happy to be here. Thanks, John.
Yeah, no worries. And I see Tomosayu Suzuki, hi, it's good to see you. Some of the names I'm not familiar with, but we're all glad to have you guys. Yeah, who will start the bidding? Who'd like to? Who's got some burning questions on their mind? I'll just pause for 7 seconds and make everybody uncomfortable.
This is becoming routine. Happens a lot.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Hi. This is my first time to join this session, and I'm from Tokyo right now. And hi. We are very first company that started the Linux in the open source world that provide the exchange of the data, and we are very much looking for the your baseline protocol. That is very exciting. So we are now starting to study about the baseline protocol. So that's why. And anyway, thank you for your.
That's fantastic to hear. What are you finding about it that what are you are you getting stuck on anything? I mean, Kyle in particular is in a good position to help you with any issues, and that's part of what Q&A is all about. I mean, we've got a half an hour. We do it every week.
Actually, yeah, thank you very much. But actually, I'm not the engineer, and today, so I'm the very beginning to the teams. It's very important for that to develop the open source product.
It was a lot about like what would you use Baseline for, and that sort of thing. We can go through that. In fact, I can share my screen and just talk briefly about that. To me, this is Baseline protocol. It's really about speeding the adoption of mainnet in a way that makes long-held concerns about public and private blockchain irrelevant while solving practical issues, specifically in B2B process automation, right? That's it. That's being really fancy about that. A lot of blockers to using the mainnet. 75% of companies are projecting going to public blockchain for some things that make sense in the future, according to Forrester last year. Blockchain blockers are data locality, privacy, compartmentalization, business rules are all exposed, scaling issues are an issue, strategic intelligence leaks just linear effectively. You don't really have those issues. You don't have silos. You don't have a confidentiality problem. Everything is discrete. You have atomic compartmentalization. You have locality and privacy. GDPR issues are effectively non-issues as long as you're doing those correctly on your traditional systems of record. And it's pay as you go, low TCO. You're effectively changing out doing capital expense to set up a common frame of reference between two systems of record. And you're saying, no, I'm going to use the mainnet. It's always on, and I'll just pay some gas as I go as I use it. And I think the most specific thing is non-repudiation and flow control. That using a baselining approach allows you to say for sure that your counterparty got the message, recorded the message, deposited the message, signed the message, and that everything that happened after that.
All right.
By the way, nobody poached Lucas. He's happy where he is, but he's one of the most brilliant engineering minds I've met in a long time. And
you're too kind.
I loved your invention. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Where to use the Baseline protocol? Mission critical projects where automation between multiple partners is the primary requirement. 20% of partners or SMEs or do low volumes, so you don't really there's no justification for setting up expensive traditional enterprise service bus. Reducing upfront cut per SAP, the more Dynamics, the more Oracle apps. I mean, these are and were good inventions. We don't throw these things out just because we have blockchain. That's a terrible idea. Systems of record are good things. And blockchain, turns out, might be more useful, not as a new system of record, but as middleware for systems of record. And then the most important one to me is, really the next two are, not all partners should have access to or even awareness of every step in the workflow. When that's the case, you really want to use a baselining approach. Instead of putting every partner into a private blockchain and thinking that one of those partners isn't suddenly someday going to be your competitor, where you wish that they hadn't gotten all the information that they got in that ledger. You can say, no, the only parties that know the existence of this particular workflow step are the immediate counterparties. And yet I can then follow on with other counterparties in future workflow steps that may have no awareness at all of the previous one. A good example of that is if you have a shipper who also makes products that compete with yours, wouldn't it be nice if they could drop with a bulletin board, a magic bus, if you will, a mainnet operating in a Baseline protocol, you have the ability to do that dead drop with, and then you're going to read. We use baseline protocol for, if you're thinking about what to use baseline, whether or not to use baseline, lots of reasons not to use the approach. And I'll say, as I say every time, baseline is not a platform, a chain, a token, a scheme, a coin, a product. It's just a way of putting things together that makes sense and that will not get you in trouble with your CISO if you're in an enterprise trying to work with other companies. So enough said on that.
John, you can tag me in anytime you want. I can sort of show.
Yep, you're up next as soon as if you're doing.
Yeah. Maybe some good context, yeah. So a little background. I started to provide to baseline, or not to baseline, to blockchain enable enterprises. It was a little too early. Enterprises didn't understand how to be blockchain enabled, and so we're still sort of seeing that. And then I think that's another reason why baseline is such a critical initiative in terms of developing standards. In the 90s, EDI, when it finally became standardized, exploded. I think you'll see the same thing. It was built to blockchain enable organizations that weren't ready to be blockchain enabled. But we came out of that with a bunch of really mature APIs that really focus around orchestration, peer-to-peer network orchestration, and blockchain applications. Peer-to-peer orchestration fabric and a low-code enterprise application development environment. It's like the application APIs are sort of like Web3 for for any language, any programming language that is, like Web3.js, but for any language. And so in the context of what I've been working on in terms of baseline, Provide is a bring your own keys platform. It's not really a platform. It's a bring your own keys sort of launch pad for peer-to-peer networks and organizations who are joining Baseline's processes. An emerging tool, I'll call it, that is built using the Provide APIs. That is essentially, it's like a baseline as a service launchpad or rendezvous point. So if you want to, and it's a production grade sort of environment. So if you want to get started with the baseline protocol, and you realize that the baseline protocol is still evolving very rapidly, coordination point where all the participants can make sure all the updates to the orchestrate to the baseline stack are forward compatible, essentially. So like if I wanted to create a new project, I'm not going to go through the entire process because it's a shuttle project, and I'm the first organization to do this. I guess we don't really need this down here, huh? I just basically can say, where do I want to put this? Where do I want my infrastructure to live? Where do I want this baseline stack to live? And then I put some key material in, and then I essentially name my project. It's whatever, and then you can create a new organization or you select one that you've already created. And so this Shuttle 34 project is kind of funny because Radish 34, Shuttle 34, haha, right? When a new project gets created, you essentially have some stuff that happens on using the Provide APIs. And the first thing is transaction gets transaction fails, like the contract deployment fails because the new wallet doesn't have any ether in it. But then the platform subsidizes the transaction and then it tries it again automatically. So magically, what you get from that is this set of contracts. You get the baseline suite of smart contracts deployed in the environment on the Ropsten testnet. So this is sort of like an early glimpse into what functionality could be useful for like an enterprise meta transaction relay, in this context. It's interesting, I think. So back over here, understanding we have the registry contract. We also, we're the first organization in here. We can invite some team members. We have, an address here that it is in GitHub. And so, as you sort of like, look how easy it is, to get started here in terms of getting, you need two organizations and a certain why they can be comfortable that their experiment won't run off the rails in a week when we merge this massive PR that Carpet's working on. Who knows? There's essentially what you this one. Every organization gets a handful. These four provide containers, and this NATS container actually is almost ready to actually double as a baseline container as well. As we've been working on adding support for NATS in the baseline core baseline messaging package. You see, like there's some other cool integration opportunities, for example, with the Splunk container, and then we've been working with Unibright pretty closely on sort of an extension to the Unibright connector that essentially marries up Unibright's connector with provides Goldmine Vault and IDENT APIs, which are sort of the Vault as a key management. It's specific for sort of tailored towards zero knowledge proofs, and this like the key material that every organization needs in the baseline protocol. And Goldmine is a microservice, a provide microservice that does translation between some companies like and tools like Nethermind. They're really excited to contribute to baseline, and I mean they've got an enterprise grade Ethereum client. It's pretty cool team. And then you see the baseline stack, right? Like you see the container runtimes that are going to be changing very rapidly. And so it's a matter of, this is, and you see like some of these are provisioning, like, yeah, like there's still some, this is still in flight, like this is in my local environment, but a lot of these containers are available and online. And this is actually local, like in production, you're going to see a whole lot more containers than you see here. And the reason for that is, this is based on a branch that sort of is a little bit ahead of master, where we're working on like fixing up some things like consolidating a couple of services. The API and Messenger have like an import cycle on each other, and like stuff like that. So that's been consolidated into a single container called baseline. And so like this is the baseline is the API container that Goldmine, like the Unibright talks to Goldmine, it talks to the baseline protocol system. It's pretty exciting. I think John maybe can. I think we're going to try to demo something, at some point this month. There's not really a date set, but we're working on it.
It's pretty exciting. And Kyle, if I can interrupt. Let's talk about where are the gaps? I mean, where do you need some help? Where could some bright developer make a mark? What do you think is missing? What's the next thing? What do you think people could be doing to make a name for themselves?
So one really quick win is actually in the context of the Consensus Health hackathon coming up. We could use an Android developer. I think
Vitalik Buterin and Joe Lubin and a bunch of other people.
He's excited. He's actually leveraging this tool. I think I'm hoping that it can help him a bit. And one thing that I will say that he could use is an Android.
If there's an Android developer out there who would like to get their work seen by Vitalik Buterin and some other folks.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. There it is.
Hey, Kyle, could you do us a favor? Put both the GitHub issue that you're working from on your stuff. Where would, if somebody's in the GitHub repo, where would they want to go to see the work that you're doing? I know that you probably got a branch that hasn't been pulled to master yet, but maybe you
I can share a few links for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. And if you could also post for me because I'm going to talk for a minute.
Sure.
The one for Balaji's stuff. And by the way, everybody make sure that you get on the Slack. It's incredibly active Slack group. I've been looking at the numbers. They keep on going up. Usually after the launch of something, they go down. These are going up and up and up. So you can get a hold of any of these folks. And there's a lot of big company executives and and developers who are lurking around inside that Slack. They don't want to come out quite yet with public statements about their support for the mainnet. But I think this is the year where everybody's going to just start saying, just like in 2015, they're going. So
like Fight Club. The
it's
first
like Fight
rule
Club.
about mainnet is nobody talks about being on mainnet.
Yeah, because it's because we've entered the period of being boring and useful in blockchain land, right?
It's just the dull rhythm of
the dull rhythm of progress. So let's
the dull rhythm of progress.
The dull rhythm of progress. Kyle, let it be known that you coined that phrase. Anybody that's having trouble getting, the real practical meat and potato stuff. Is anybody having trouble getting into the community? Is anybody having? That too.
Everything works.
Everything is awesome. So let me show this real quick. This is our current. Apologies for the kids in the background. That's the world we live in now. They are adorable. So we have here SSC, the Specification Steering Committee, and the TSC review this each week. We're getting into a nice rhythm on that. So all of these different topics from key components and integrations, tools, something I spend my time on, community organization, marketing comms, security, specifications, documentation, POCs and demos. So in here, you'll see that, there's this SAP Dynamics demo, there's a COVID-19 demo, there's an invoice workflow demo being worked, and something Kyle's working on, baseline as a service demo, which is quite exciting. Are you ready to talk about the contracts thing? Maybe next week you can talk about the contracts integration. No, this is a baseline thing, so this is not consensus matter at all.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we're
pulling them in baseline. I was going to say, we could let them speak for themselves when they get here. They might be on the phone. I don't know.
Yeah. No. SAP. So the companies that are working on the SAP integration are Unibright and Envision Blockchain, Provide, LimeChain. Kyle, who am I missing?
That covers it.
Yeah. I think it's not lost on anybody that traditional systems of record are going to sell a lot more in a baseline world, right? Because baseline supports the idea that systems of record are to be used.
Not blockchain enabling the companies, blockchain enabling the spaces between companies.
Yeah.
That's why the platform is too early, right? Don't blockchain enable the companies. Exactly.
Yeah, in terms of a question about any particular company in the SAP or the ERP space joining, I think just let the news speak for itself as it comes. But keep your eye on the space.
Good question from Petco. What are the features of traditional enterprise middleware you're trying to replace with Baseline?
So MQ series is not something that you'd replace, but you might need it less for some things. It's it's never going to be as fast. A singleton that even under ETH2 conditions, you're not going to have a singleton that is faster than something that doesn't need to do consensus. And as is, right? Even with sharding, Cassandra databases still are infinitely scalable. You still need translators. MuleSoft's business, I think, is very safe. I think it's not so much about eliminating need for some of these things as it is for advancing the requirement of, a few years ago, Nick Kritikos was on the call, and I will happily remember making a lot of money on things like BPM, right? Business process wave of this move towards cross-company BPM, where your systems on a record-by-record basis
together into suites, and they became ERP and CRM suites. where the different functionality was integrated and worked best together. Companies implemented these things and they realized, wouldn't it be great if they all talk to each other within my single enterprise? So enterprise application effective if we can integrate with our supply chain and trading partners. And the answer is yes, right? And if you look at how these systems come together, incredibly high startup costs, right? You got to get a bunch of very smart people together to determine how you're going to work together, how you're going to integrate your systems, what software you're going to use, what standards you're going to use, all this kind of stuff. Implement it. And that was hugely expensive. I went to many Oracle Club trips on the back of EAI projects, which was great for me and my family, but nonetheless, a lot of spending money. Before the first, in addition to that, these business networks include so many players in them now. Not all of them can afford this kind of startup capital to integrate into this network, right? Baseline somewhat democratizes that, right? One, for big enterprises, it lowers the cost of these kinds of integrations upfront so that you can get to value much more quickly. And oh, by the way, it's more of an operational expense as opposed to a capital expense. And two, it does it in a way that lowers barriers to entry for your less able network partners, right? The ones that don't have the big IT staffs, the ones that can't afford multiple millions of dollars a year just to keep this operational system together. Sorry, I got on a rant there.
No, yay, verily. No, I think that's really. So we're a little over time, but as long as I'll let this go for another 3 minutes. And again,
Petco has another question about Corda flows. You mentioned earlier in our discussion how you thought Corda flows provided, I believe, was a good messaging infrastructure, or one that and it's open source, so maybe one that we should leverage. Can you expand a little bit on that, and especially your discussion with RGB?
Yeah, I think we had the previous thing, which is on YouTube. You just go to the other previous Q&A session and office hour session, and you'll have a pretty good discussion of that from last week. And I don't think I have a lot to add to that. But Corda Flows has a good facility for that. If you're in banking and insurance, there might be some utility there. Are you going to throw out your... And, the argument I've been making to Corda is, ultimately the win-win is where there's a world where you've got plenty of notaries running around and the mainnet is also the last notary. But, that's for the future. And, we're all together on this.
Compute infrastructure, whatever that is, right? Always on, always available, not beholden to any one centralized provider.
And decide who the candidates for the job are. The job of the mainnet is to be always on, pay as you go, can't get locked out from valid operations, and resist getting taken over by Dr. Evil or some oligopoly who can lock you out or change history. Think about as an enterprise to make sense of why you would want to use the mainnet at all. And to me, that's the most succinct way of saying it.